At 84, Neil Diamond looks nothing like the superstar who once ruled the charts. A 2025 viral video showed him in a way that shocked millions of young viewers. But the real story goes much deeper. From carrying a loaded gun for protection to mob connections that nearly destroyed his career, Diamond's life was far from the wholesome image he projected. His recent health battle forced him into complete isolation, and what he revealed about his darkest years will change how you see this music legend forever. Neil Diamond was born on January 24, 1941, in Coney Island, Brooklyn. His parents were Jewish, with roots in Poland and Russia. Their families had fled persecution, hoping for a better life in America. The Diamonds lived in a small apartment above a shop. The streets outside were noisy, full of vendors' calls, and the salty breeze from the Atlantic. Neil's father, Akiba Kiev Diamond, worked as a dry goods merchant. Times were hard. The family struggled to get by. Neil wore hand-me-down clothes and shared a room with his brother. Even so, their Jewish faith gave them strength. The rough streets of Brooklyn filled Neil with ambition. He learned early how to dream big and care for those who had little. When Neil turned 16, his life shifted. His parents bought him a guitar for his birthday. It cost just $9, but it changed everything. That same day, Neil wrote his first song, Hear the Bells. He was a student at Erasmus Hall High School. There in his small bedroom, he began turning feelings into music. His songs reflected the hardships and hopes he saw around him. The guitar, though cheap, planted the seed for a future few could imagine. At school, Neil sang in the chorus. One of his classmates was Barbra Streisand. Both would go on to fame, but back then, they barely knew each other. Barbara's voice stood out, bold and confident. Neil kept to himself, quietly writing songs. They shared the stage, unaware they would one day sing a famous duet together. Neil's talents weren't limited to music. He earned a fencing scholarship to New York University. He studied pre-medicine, aiming to become a doctor. But just 10 credits from graduating, he walked away. He couldn't ignore his passion for music. The choice crushed his parents. They had hoped for a secure future for their son, but Neil's heart was set. He gave up stability for a dream that offered no guarantees. He found his first music job at Sunbeam Music on Tin Pan Alley. He earned $50 a week, writing songs for little-known performers. The work was tough. Many of his songs went unheard. Still, he learned how to write quickly and cleverly. He faced rejection again and again, but this grind taught him skills that would later lift him to stardom. After quitting Sunbeam, Neil rented a tiny storage room above Birdland nightclub. The space was bare, cold, and noisy. He spent $30 on an upright piano and installed a payphone. His daily meals cost just 35 cents. A cheese sandwich, a Coke, and sometimes a piece of candy. The hunger, noise, and loneliness didn't break him. They made him stronger. He poured everything into his music. For almost 7 years, he sold just one song a week, barely scraping by. His lyrics were called too wordy. Publishers shut their doors. Friends succeeded while he stayed in the shadows. But Neil refused to change his style. His songs were his truth. No amount of failure could make him give up. Before fame found him, Neil tried recording as part of a duo, Neil and Jack. The singles they released flopped. As a solo act, he signed with Columbia Records. His first single failed. They dropped him. But Neil didn't stop. He kept writing wherever he could. On buses, in borrowed spaces, and in his little room above Birdland. In that tiny room, magic finally happened. In 1966, he released Solitary Man. The song climbed to number 55 on the Billboard Hot 100. At the time, Diamond didn't even realize that the lyrics reflected his own loneliness as a struggling artist. It wasn't until years later, after Freudian analysis, that he understood the song was really about himself. Soon after, he wrote Cherry, Cherry. That one shot up to number 6 and made him a rising star. Both songs came from the long hours he spent locked away in that tiny room, working through his isolation and chasing his dreams. Away from the pressure of the Brill Building, he found his voice. In 1965, Diamond signed with Bang Records. It looked like a big break, but Bang wasn't just any label. Its founder, Bert Burns, had deep ties to dangerous people. The label's logo was a .38 pistol, a silent warning of the world Diamond was entering. He later said, There were some guys with broken noses who were helping to get the records played. These weren't just tough-looking men. They were the muscle of organized crime, making sure Bang's records ruled the airwaves. Back then, the mafia's grip on jukeboxes, radio stations, and record sales was no secret. DJs played what they were told. Rivals knew better than to interfere. Even today, Diamond speaks of those years with unease. The mob's influence was everywhere, and Bang Records was one of the most obvious examples. As Diamond's records became hits, he saw the darker side up close. Bootleggers in New Jersey began copying his singles. Burns didn't hire lawyers. He sent out his enforcers. Diamond remembered how those bootleggers wound up with broken legs. That was the mob's way, fast and brutal. In the black market for records, crossing the wrong people brought severe punishment. At Bang, violence wasn't hidden. It was part of how business was done. Artists like Diamond had no choice but to accept it. There were no safe complaints, no appeals. The label's reputation kept everyone in line. One figure stood out in this dangerous world. Tommy Eboli, often called Tommy Eby, was a feared member of the Genovese crime family. He wasn't just a rumor. He was deeply involved in Bang Records, both as a silent partner and an enforcer. His presence inspired the character Tommy Orr in the Broadway musical A Beautiful Noise. The mafia used record labels, nightclubs, and publishers for more than just music. They laundered money, extorted, and controlled artists. For Diamond, this meant every decision was shadowed by the threat of mob action. The Genovese family's reach shaped his career far beyond the songs he wrote. The mob wasn't in the background. It was a force that defined the time. By 1967, Diamond wanted out, but breaking free wasn't easy. The threats became personal. Friends warned him that the FBI had learned the mafia was after him. He carried a loaded .38 for protection. His wife and daughter went into hiding on Long Island. Diamond walked the streets armed, knowing the risk. The fear was real. The mob didn't let valuable artists walk away without a fight. The death threats were meant to trap him, to remind him who held the power. That period was filled with dread. A single wrong move could have cost him his life. Then came a shocking turn. On December 30th, 1967, Bert Burns died suddenly. He was only 38. The cause was listed as a heart attack. Burns had suffered heart trouble since childhood, but the timing raised questions. He had many enemies in both music and the mob. His death left Bang Records in chaos and opened the door for Diamond to finally escape. The legal fight dragged on, bitter and tense. But by March 1968, Diamond was free. Burns's death felt like both an escape and a warning. To this day, people wonder if the mob played a role in what really happened. Neil Diamond's journey to superstardom began with a song that changed everything. In 1966, he was just a young, struggling songwriter in New York, trying to make a name for himself. One night, fueled by his own heartbreak, he wrote, "I'm a Believer." The Monkees, a band created for television, recorded it. The song came out in November 1966. It was an instant hit. It shot straight to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 7 weeks. It sold over 10 million copies around the world and became one of the biggest singles of the 1960s. The success of the song made the Monkees famous. It also made the music world sit up and notice Neil Diamond. Suddenly, everyone wanted his songs. Decades later, the song was reborn when Smash Mouth recorded it for the Shrek movie. A whole new generation fell in love with it, proving that Diamond's talent had no expiration date. That same year, Neil Diamond released his first album. It was called The Feel of Neil Diamond and came out in August 1966. This album showed he was more than just a man behind the scenes. His songs, Solitary Man and Cherry Cherry, became hits. Solitary Man was his first single to chart, and it became a favorite at his concerts. Cherry Cherry climbed to #6 on the Billboard Hot 100. These songs helped shape his image as a performer with his own sound. He mixed pop, rock, and folk in a way that felt fresh and real. He appeared twice on Dick Clark's American Bandstand that year. Millions of people saw him perform, and many became fans. The album's success proved he was ready for the spotlight, not just the writing room. By 1967, Diamond wanted more than just hit songs. He wanted to create music that spoke to him. His time at Bang Records had given him success, but not the freedom he craved. He was often told to stick to simple pop tunes that didn't show what he really felt. That changed when he signed with Uni Records in late 1967. This deal was rare. It let him write, produce, and record whatever he wanted. He could now explore deep feelings and personal stories in his music. His albums after this showed his growth as an artist. His songs spoke about love, loneliness, and finding yourself. This move changed his career forever. It also inspired other singers to fight for the same freedom. It was a risk, but one that made him respected not just as a singer, but as a true artist. As the 1960s ended and the 1970s began, Diamond found the sound that fans would always know him for. In 1969, he released Sweet Caroline. He wrote it with Caroline Kennedy in mind. The song's famous "Ba Ba Ba" chorus made people want to sing along. Soon it was being played at sports events and parties. It became a symbol of fun and togetherness, especially at Boston Red Sox games. In 1970, he gave fans another hit with Cracklin' Rosie. This song, about a wine that a Native American tribe loved, reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was his first chart-topping hit as a performer. These songs showed that Diamond could write music that touched people's hearts. They crossed generations and brought people together. During this time, pop music was changing. Frank Sinatra's reign was ending. Elvis Presley's style was shifting. There was a gap in American music, and Neil Diamond stepped into it. His songs appealed to older fans who loved classic pop. They also spoke to younger listeners who wanted something new but familiar. Some critics thought his style was too safe, but fans didn't agree. They packed his concerts. They bought his records in huge numbers. Neil Diamond became the star who could please both young and old. In 1971, Neil Diamond made history. He signed a deal with Columbia Records worth $5 million. At the time, this was unheard of. In today's money, that would be more than $35 million. It was the biggest recording contract ever given to an artist up to that point. But it wasn't just about the money. This deal gave Diamond something rare: creative control. He could choose his producers. He could shape his own sound. No more interference from the label. Diamond's contract shook the music world. Other artists saw what he had done and started demanding the same. The music industry would never be the same. And for Neil, this deal opened the door to some of his boldest projects. One of those projects was the soundtrack for Jonathan Livingston Seagull in 1973. Diamond poured his heart into the music. The film itself was a failure. It only made $2 million at the box office, but the soundtrack told a different story. It reached #2 on the Billboard charts. It sold over 10 million copies worldwide, including 2 million in the US. Diamond won a Grammy and a Golden Globe for the score. The songs became a key part of his concerts. Audiences loved the rich sounds and emotional melodies. The music outlived the film and proved Diamond could do more than pop hits. But behind the scenes, trouble brewed. Diamond clashed with the film's director, Paul Bartlett. Diamond was angry that Bartlett had cut much of his music from the movie. He felt his work had been ruined, so he took the matter to court. Diamond won. The court ordered that 5 minutes of his score and 3 songs, Anthem, Prologue, and Dear Father, be put back in the film. Bartlett wasn't happy. He called Diamond's music too slick and accused him of hiding insecurity behind arrogance. The fight left Diamond bitter. He said he would never work on another movie unless he had full creative control. Hollywood still wanted him, though. He got offers for major acting roles. He was offered the lead in Lenny in 1974 and Taxi Driver in 1976, but he said no. Diamond had been working with an acting coach since 1968. Still, he felt out of place on film sets. He once said he felt like a fish out of water. Auditioning for Lenny shook him so much that he went into therapy. He knew himself well. He wouldn't act just for fame. He wanted to be real. That's why he only agreed to do The Jazz Singer later, where he could play a version of himself. In 1972, Diamond did something no rock star had done before. He played 20 one-man shows on Broadway at the Winter Garden Theater. The theater had 1,600 seats, and every show sold out. It was the first time a rock star had done something like that since Al Jolson in the 1930s. Diamond stood alone on stage with his guitar. No band, just his voice and presence. He turned Broadway into something fresh. The crowds were amazed. He brought the feeling of a small club to a grand theater. And with that, Neil Diamond proved he was more than just a singer. When Neil Diamond stepped into Hollywood with the jazz singer in 1980, it felt like the perfect plan. He was already a music superstar, and this was meant to turn him into a movie star too. He played Jess Robin, a young man torn between his father's wishes and his own dream of becoming a pop singer. But everything about the film seemed to go wrong. The production was a mess. They rewrote the script again and again. The first director quit. The leading lady was replaced. The budget swelled to $13 million. The movie finally hit cinemas on December 19, 1980. It earned $27.1 million, so it doubled its cost. But money wasn't the whole story. Critics tore it apart. They called Diamond's acting stiff and awkward. Even the great